Hello, everyone, and welcome to the My Healthy Home Summit. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Caroline Blazovsky. I'm a national healthy home expert and an environmental residential consultant with over 24 years of experience. This summit is designed to educate you about the process of creating a healthy home, to learn how our homes may affect our health and wellness, and the benefits associated with living and working in healthier spaces. We've compiled the most decorated speakers in this arena to help you on your journey. Today, we are joined by Dustin Onghanseng, who will be discussing 9 air quality factors affecting our health and well being. Welcome, Dustin. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are thrilled to have you.
Hi, Caroline. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much. I know we're on completely different time zones. We are, if you could tell the audience where you are, so they kind of know that we're very diverse in time right now.
Yeah, I'm in Singapore right now. It's 10 in the evening.
So we appreciate you taking the time to be with us, even though it's so late for you. As a healthy building expert, can you start by giving us a quick synopsis of your background and how you became interested in how our home environments affect our health?
hmm Yeah. Ever since I was a kid, I've already had allergic rhinitis. And this is something that I've been very conscious about, especially whenever I wake up in the morning. I always get my allergy attacks. And if there are like particles or chemicals in the air, or if it's not healthy at all, I also get my allergy attacks. So it's usually a runny nose, cough, sneezes, and it will just last for days until all of those pollutants, so to speak, disappear. Yeah. And that was more on a personal basis. And eventually, when I started doing my MBA, the school I was in, they didn't really have a healthy building for the classes. And even the dormitories weren't healthy because you can actually see mold on the walls and on the door. And they didn't really want to do anything about it. So that's when this whole idea of me trying to do something about the air quality inside buildings to improve health came about. And that's when I started getting into this field.
And what type of climate? I mean, where when you did your MBA, what type of climate were you in?
I did my MBA in Hong Kong. So, yeah, so it's 4 seasons over there, and it's usually during the winter when you would see the mold. Yeah, and if it's during summer, there's not enough ventilation. It gets really, really hot and humid as well inside. So you always need to switch on your air conditioner and just keep it pumping and pumping. Yeah. So it gets really dry inside the buildings and inside the dormitories.
And that in that prodded you also to become an entrepreneur. And you can talk a little bit about what you do currently.
Mhm. Yep. So when I was doing my MBA program, I had allergy attacks frequently. So I met my co-founder there, and he has asthma. So we decided eventually that we needed to fix this issue. I mean, it's for our own personal health. Both of us dropped our classes, started building the product, started the company. Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, it's interesting of all our 42 speakers, and we selected, we did a lot of consideration and put a lot of time into selecting the best speakers that we felt that were in the healthy home industry. And everyone pretty much has a unique story that brought them to this world and space because it doesn't seem like it's something you wake up and just say, I'm going to be a healthy home specialist today. We all have a challenge or some sort of obstacle that we had to overcome. And for the better, I think. So I think that's amazing that you're willing to share that with us. So thank you. Um, let's talk about these 9 components, contaminants in a home that you really feel are some of the most important to monitor. So I'll let you start. I mean, let's start with temperature and humidity. I think that's common to everybody, but let's kind of touch on that first.
Yep. Yeah. So two out of the nine are temperature and humidity. Temperature is mainly for comfort. You want to make sure that the space in your home or in your building is always comfortable. And that's something that people in general are able to understand and put a finger to. So we naturally would need to monitor temperature and understand it. The same case for humidity. Humidity is more about whether there's too much moisture or if the air is too dry. If the air becomes too dry, you'll end up having a sore throat when you wake up in the morning, and you don't you won't feel so rested, especially if, let's say, you're sleeping with your mouth open. Your entire throat would end up becoming extremely dry. So that's not comfortable when you wake up. And if there's too much moisture, you end up having mold inside your home, which you also want to avoid because once mold is there, it would create more pollutants in the air, which then transitions us to other pollutants such as particles and chemicals. So mold essentially would release mold spores. So it's also a type of particle on top of the usual dust particles, uh, yeah, actually different types of particles. Even dander is called this type of particle from pets. Yeah, so these would also affect your health and it would trigger allergies. And when we look at on the chemical side, it's usually from the products that you use. So these are usually VOCs. They can come from, let's say, your soap, your detergent, your washing, the soap that you clean, dishwashing liquid, the paint in your home, adhesives on your furniture.
Mm.
So all of these contribute to chemicals in the air or VOCs in the air. So that's four of them. The fifth one would be carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide would be more of whether you have sufficient ventilation. So if you don't have enough ventilation, your CO2 levels in the home would go up, and that's going to make you feel sleepy because you're not getting enough oxygen. So that's usually the case. Or if, let's say, you're in an office, you're having a meeting, you feel sleepy because you think maybe your boss is boring, but the real thing is maybe there's not enough oxygen in the room or too much CO2,
We
so you
tell
fall
ourselves
asleep.
that, right? Just to avoid, "Oh, it's not you. It's me.
Yes, precisely. Yep. Yeah. So those are five of them. The next one would be carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is a bit more fatal. So if there's higher levels in the home, you want to make sure that you ventilate that out or you reduce that immediately because exposure to high levels of carbon monoxide can cause death. So that's something
Let's
that you really want to avoid.
and I don't mean to break your thought for a second, but I want you to talk about carbon monoxide. The regular monitors that people have in their home are set to a very high level of carbon monoxide. So they're set to go off when you're going to pass away or have death in your home or someone's going to pass out. But talk about like a low level of carbon monoxide can be just as bad as a long-term exposure. So it's
Hmm.
important to look at little bits just as it is to look at a big amount.
Yes, that's correct. Because a big amount would perhaps uh, exposure to a large amount would be much more fatal because that would have an effect on your health immediately. Whereas long-term exposure to small amounts would have long-term effects. You won't feel it immediately, but it accumulates until it triggers eventually. Yeah, so you want to make sure that the levels are really low or almost, yeah, it shouldn't be there at all for carbon monoxide.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole concept of pollution is you want to minimize exposure. Even though you say that your levels are pretty safe in your home, you also want to find a way to reduce it further because exposure is still exposure.
So go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. You were talking about the other qualities, but I
No
just wanted to
worries.
touch on that for our audience because I think it's a misconception that people think they're protected with a carbon monoxide detector, and that's not true.
Mm, yep. So I've spoken about six. The seventh one would be more about just barometric pressure. It's understanding weather changes. So you have air pressure in the air. The eighth one would be nitrogen dioxide. This usually comes from traffic, usually from cars. So if you live in a more urban area or in an area where there's high traffic or more cars passing along, your NO2 levels would be higher than compared to a rural area. But NO2 actually moves through long distances. So even though you're in a rural area, there's a urban area close by, even miles away, the NO2 may still be transported.
Mm.
Yeah, and the last pollutant would be ozone. Ozone is more a reaction between NO2 and oxygen. So it forms ozone as well. Yeah, so the effect is you still want to minimize ozone.
And there's some, well, let's talk about pressure a little bit because I think our audience, I think people know, I would hope that we know what carbon monoxide is or have some familiarity with it. We know a lot about temperature, obviously from comfort. Humidity is something that we're getting people, I think, to understand that in your home, you at least I feel this way. I feel that I look at my thermostat for humidity now more than I look at it for temperature because you could be 75 and have 80% humidity and you'll feel so sweaty and hot and just feel like, oh, it's
Mm,
awful. But you could be 75 and 20 and feel completely comfortable, right? With 20%
mhm.
humidity.
That's right.
So, do you find that you look at your humidity more than you look at temp now? I do.
Yeah, yeah, because once you understand their relationship, you would look at humidity as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting because I have humidity monitors all over my house, and, they all say different things, they vary a little bit, but I'm always looking
Mhm.
at them. So, explain to people why they want to control humidity. What's a reason that you want to?
Humidity is really about dryness. So you don't want the air to be extremely dry because it affects your throat. That's what you want to avoid. And if it's too much moisture, it also promotes uh, virus survival. So humidity is a very big factor when it comes to viruses. Yeah. So viruses can be affected by humidity, particles, different aspects of air quality. But humidity is a major factor when it comes to virus survival when
Are
it's
there
already there.
Are there any studies or information, especially like pertaining to COVID or flu or any of these
Mhm.
viruses, a norovirus, that show us that humidity helps us when we're using, or a lack of humidity helps us when we're using devices to monitor?
Yep. So if you want to achieve optimal humidity, it should be in the range of 40 to 60% when it comes to minimizing virus survival. The more extreme it is, the higher the chance that the virus would survive longer if it's already there. Yeah. So it's more on that aspect. And if your humidity goes high, like 70, 80%, there's a chance that it would promote mold growth. So if your humidity is constantly high, there's a higher chance that mold may be forming. It may not necessarily be there, but you're just giving it the opportunity to grow.
Mm.
Yeah. So what you want to do is you want to bring humidity back down to 40 to 60% so that you minimize the chances of mold growing.
And let's talk a little bit about pressure, because I don't think people understand pressure at all. Like, pressure is happening all the time in our spaces, from room to room, from outside to inside. So, can you talk about pressure and what that means and what it does to our home environments?
Yep. Pressure is more of, let's say you open the door. Let's say you're in your room, you open the door. Does the air flow in or does the air flow out? So it's determined by the pressure. Yeah, so that's something that you also want to look into how you design your home. So that affects it. Yeah, that's usually the case when people look at pressure. Yeah, and if you look at pressure as well, you can also have an idea on how the weather might change. Yeah, so it's like, I mean, if you look at the weather station, they use barometric pressure
Pressure.
to
Mhm.
determine whether it's going to rain or not.
Right.
So if you have that pressure sensor inside your home, you can have a good estimate whether it's going to rain outside or not. Yeah,
And
then
they
you can
usually
actually.
give you a little indicator too. They'll have like a little rain cloud when the pressure's changing,
Yes,
right? They'll
that's
tell
correct.
you.
Yes.
How does it affect a home though? Or like how can it affect an occupant in a negative way?
Mm. Uh, Not so much actually. The pressure is mainly used to understand whether the air is coming in or out the room. At least when we look at how our customers use our solution,
Mhm.
that's how they do it. It's whether air moves in or air moves out. Then that helps them to take other types of action. So when it comes to health, there's less of an effect.
Mhm.
It's more of the airflow that they try to understand. Yeah.
So if you were to say if we had a monitor in our space and it was registering high pressure, what would that
Mhm.
tell us and what would we do to correct it?
Oh, you can't really correct pressure because it's really in the environment. So it is where you're at. Yeah. So you don't really try to change pressure. Like when weather changes, pressure changes on its own.
So you don't like when if you were to have a monitor and it says your pressure's high, it's just more of information that it's
Yeah.
coming into the building or out of the building.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. Yeah. Mm.
And then with something like NO2, um,
Mhm,
when someone sees an NO2 elevation, what does that tell them? And what do they need to do? Or do they need to ventilate? What's the process?
mhm. Yep. So if NO2 is high, it's more of identifying where the source is. Normally, NO2 would increase because of something from outdoors, because the source is usually from outdoors. It's seldom that NO2 comes from indoors. Yeah. So usually what we see people do is that when NO2 goes up, they shut their windows.
Mm,
So they prevent the NO2 from outside coming, and then they'll see NO2 levels go down. Then they need to find a balance because once you shut your ventilation, your CO2 goes up. So you need to find that balance. So you might need to open the ventilation again, let some of the CO2 go out, and then shut it off again. So that's the value of data. It influences your action to find that balance.
mm. Everything
Yeah.
we've talked in the summit a lot about balancing everything. It's somewhere
Mhm.
everything is in the middle. Our humidity
Yeah.
is in the middle, our temperature is in the middle, our
Mhm.
CO2 is in the middle, our oxygen needs to be in the middle. So it's interesting that in houses in general, in building, in anything that pertains to a home, it's sort of finding that balance. Is that
Mhm.
perfect? And it's hard because that's what makes our industry so challenging. Everything's constantly moving. So you have to be monitoring and staying with it because it's like you're on a wave and you constantly have to try to maneuver yourself. Um, we find too, I think with NO2, when we're talking about that can also be something that is a byproduct of combustion. So I found over the
Mhm.
years that when furnaces weren't burning clean, or you had sometimes a heat exchanger issue, sometimes a stove that wasn't burning correctly, the NO2 obviously would be elevated. Also, cars can do it, right? If you start your car up in the garage, it can elevate it. So a lot of these things are really important for us to monitor to know if we're doing something accidentally or if we have something go wrong in our home, an appliance. I think it's so helpful to have continuous monitoring at all times. um, let's talk a little bit about the industry of monitoring and how it's really transformed, because we know years ago we couldn't even find a good monitor, right? It was very challenging. There were monitors and sensors, but they just weren't accurate. So you want to talk about that a
Mhm.
little
Yeah, I mean, the industry has evolved a lot. There would be monitors that are designed for the home, and then there would be monitors that are designed for the commercial environment. So it really varies. Usually, if it's designed for the commercial environment, the performance is significantly better. If it's for the home, there's a give and take on how good it is compared to a commercial product because it's more of a price issue,
bit.
right? So if it's for the home, usually you want to keep it at a certain price point. So when it comes to performance, it won't be able to match that of a commercial monitor. So that's how the industry has evolved. Yeah, but if you look at, let's say, monitors from, let's say, 2015, and then today, 2024, performance of residential monitors have drastically improved already.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I
And
believe that it's still going to improve much more
oh yes.
because it's not just about the hardware, it's also about the software that's involved. So there would be two types. One type of monitor would be purely just a hardware, you'll have a screen on it. It would perform at a certain level. And then there would be monitors that are connected to a software and an app, and then they would perform at a different level.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's the amount of technology that you try to pack into the whole solution.
And we need, unfortunately, like we know its price point. And
Mhm,
going into homes and seeing thousands of homes, it is so important. I try to emphasize to consumers that they need to be monitoring their space all the time. There's just too many things in a home that can go wrong, and you
mhm,
can't smell it, you can't see it, you don't know it. And these are things that can really affect your health and well being, from cardiovascular disease to neurologic diseases to cancer. And you can really expand your life, your longevity. And I believe it's just essential key to our health and wellness, if not to me, one of the biggest. So, can you talk a little bit about health effects and what you know about health effects if people don't monitor and what can happen?
yep. So if people don't monitor, it's basically you don't know what's going on inside your home or inside your building. And the effect of it is more long term than short term because it's about accumulating of the pollution inside your body. In the immediate, maybe in the short term, you're not going to feel anything. But as you age, as you get exposed more, then that's when the health effects come in,
Right.
right? So you won't know today, you won't know in a few years. You'll know once you get older. Yeah, that's usually the case. Yeah, it's all about avoiding that accumulation of pollution inside your body.
And what kind of studies, can you talk a little bit about buildings? And I'm sure you've seen some interesting studies where it's improved performance, where it's improved cognitive function. Can you share that with us?
Yep. If you look at a building on how it operates, the total cost of building operations, 90% would be people. So if you really want to increase the asset or of your building, you have to improve people's health. And what we have seen with the companies that we worked with is that the moment they monitor air quality and they make adjustments to it, they can reduce sick leave by 20-30%. They can increase productivity by 30-40%. They can increase mental well-being as well because they feel comfortable, they feel happier, so it enhances the well-being of people inside. They become much more comfortable in the space. They don't need to wear jackets inside the office because the space is comfortable, it's not freezing or it's not too hot. So the moment you make adjustments to create a more conducive work environment, sick leave goes down, productivity goes up, and there's a clear ROI behind all of that.
What else do you think is a benefit from employing monitors, but then, of course, doing indoor air quality? Because you come from, we're talking about two different regions of the world, doing business in two different regions, living in two different regions. And I think what's so profound about you being here, and we've interviewed some other experts from Australia and then also from Canada, is that no matter where we are in the world, we have these issues. Um, and some, I think, in areas, especially New York City, Hong Kong, we have more so than places that are more rural. So, can you talk about that? Like some of the issues that you face where in your part of the world, and then also what you think is a global agenda for monitoring.
I think one of the issues that we face is that homes generally in Southeast Asia do not have a ventilation system. The ventilation system is the window, whereas homes in the US and Canada, there are HVAC systems in the home, there are ERV systems, right? So it's easy to use data to automate those or to make adjustments much more easily.
Hmm.
Whereas in Asia, the only way to reduce carbon dioxide is to open the window. That's the only way. And once you open the window, since it's a very urbanized area,
Pollution.
pollution from outside goes in.
And you have a lot of pollution like us.
Yes, that's right. So it's much harder to find a balance here in Asia compared to, let's say, in Europe and the US and Canada, where areas outside is generally better.
What is the reason that HVAC hasn't taken hold there? I mean, there's probably pluses and minuses because I know the downside to HVAC from working in it for so long. Can you
Mhm.
share that?
I think it's just how the construction industry has evolved over time. HVACs are available inside commercial buildings and industrial buildings, but not in residential homes
Hmm.
and not in residential buildings. Yeah, I think it's more a mindset thing. Yeah.
And so when you get really hot because you have hot temperatures,
Mm,
and this is interesting because we interviewed some amazing architects in the summit who talk about building with natural in accordance to natural law, right?
mhm.
And that we sort of became adjusted where we live to temperatures and relative humidity. We didn't need to use HVAC. Do you find, because you don't live with it, that it's a challenge? Like, would you rather have it? Or is it something that you would, and how do you adjust for temperature and relative humidity when you don't have it? So is it a plus or a minus not having it?
Mm, that's a good question. Uh, if I were to view it from the perspective or homes here in Asia and how people think, people just say, "Oh, let's just switch on the aircon." shut the door, shut the window, switch on the aircon, cool the place down, and don't care about CO2. Just let it go up because at least it's cold. Yeah, that's generally the mindset. Just cool the home or the building down. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what happens. So because you've traveled all over the world. So like from your personal
Mhm.
standpoint, do you like when you just like if you come to New York and you're in a home and you just turn on the you have it regulating for you all the time. Do you like that? Prefer that? Or would you prefer to have it not be that way?
I would prefer for it to be automated, but include a ventilation system
Yeah.
so that the CO2 can be pulled out. So whenever I travel, I pick a hotel that has a ventilation inside the room.
Interesting.
Because sometimes when you pick a hotel, it's usually just the air conditioner pumping in, right?
Right.
There's no ventilation that pulls the CO2 out. So once I stay in a hotel and I find out there's no ventilation, I'm not going back to that hotel. I'll find
Interesting.
another one.
I love that. Do you
I'm
notice
very conscious of that.
No, well,
Yeah.
you're in the industry too,
Yep.
and you have your own, right, allergies and things that you
Yeah.
need for yourself, but I think if you weren't doing that, I would be concerned because you're in this industry, so I
Yeah.
expect it from you. Um, do you notice when you stay and we're talking about CO2 again, just for our audience, and this is carbon dioxide that we expel when we breathe. Um,
Mhm.
Other sources, believe it or not, when I was testing homes, I would find that when they had a sewer or a septic problem, CO2 would go up. So there's other things that actually can accumulate and cause CO2 to rise, but predominantly we think about it as what we expel out of our bodies. And it
Mhm.
gets in when you have a heavy traffic, like a hotel or a building, and you have a lot of occupants, it'll rise. Do you
Mhm.
notice a difference if you don't have ventilation and you stay at a hotel that has high CO2?
Yes, I get more allergies
Interesting.
easily. Yeah,
Mm,
easily, very easily triggered. Yeah, because you're breathing your own breath, right?
yeah.
If you put it that way. Yeah, and people who have pets in their homes tend to have higher CO2 as well.
Mm,
And it would
that's
shock
interesting.
them because the mindset is always people, not
Yeah.
pets.
Pets are people,
Yeah.
I always say. So you
Yeah.
have to accommodate, you have to vacuum for your pets, and you have to control your
Mhm.
air for your pets. Some people
Mhm.
have 7 pets in their home. I see it all the time. Lots of
Wow.
pets. Yeah.
Yeah, then CO2 would definitely jump up.
See? I love it because people relate. I mean, with the domestication of animals, most people have pets now. So it's important to know that you need to do this for your animals too, not just for
Yep,
humans.
that's right.
So let's do a little fast round. We asked all of our experts in this industry, like same questions, just to kind of get an idea so our audience can get to know you. And it's nice to kind of understand where you're coming from. So, in your home, what is your favorite room in your home?
Oh, it's my bedroom. Yeah, it's definitely
Leave.
my bedroom. Aside from the kitchen where because I enjoy cooking,
Mm.
yeah, it's gonna be my bedroom.
And what do you have in your room to help you sleep, to help with your air quality?
Yeah, in my room, I have an air purifier. I have a dehumidifier, and I always make sure I ventilate during the day. So the moment I wake up, after I take a shower, I just open the windows. So it just ventilates the whole day until in the evening, before I sleep, I turn on the aircon again. Close all the windows.
And when you sleep, let's go back to CO2 for a minute. Explain to people if you were to sleep with a door shut in your room. So now you go to sleep. Maybe you have your wife with you or significant other, whoever might be. What happens to those CO2 levels when you close up a room and you breathe and you go to sleep?
Yeah, it really goes up. It really goes up because homes here generally don't have a ventilation system. So we have no choice. The moment we go to bed, you're breathing, CO2 just rises. Yeah, there's nothing we can do. The home is not designed to have a ventilation system. Yeah.
And when that happens, the effect is so think about it. You feel sleepy, you feel groggy. When you wake up, if you're breathing in a room that has a lot of CO2, you're not going to
Mhm.
wake up feeling refreshed. You wake up
Yes,
feeling,
sometimes you wake up with a headache.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I track it myself. Like when my CO2 levels are higher than usual for a night, when I wake up, I have a headache.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it really correlates with your health.
Mm, that's amazing. And I think people just take it for granted. They shut the door and they go into the room and they just sleep. They don't
Yeah,
think that they have
that's
to.
correct.
Um, What's a favorite activity that you do in your home? I think you
Cooking.
kind of said cooking, yeah. And what kind of food do you cook? Are you a foodie? What do you make?
Yeah, pretty much a foodie. Yeah, I cook all sorts of stuff. Yeah, I
What's
like
your favorite
experimenting.
dish? What's your favorite dish to make?
Uh, prawn risotto,
Oh my gosh.
shrimp risotto. Yeah,
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, I'm a foodie too. I like eating my food.
cool.
So, so that brings us again to a monitor and why, if you cook in your house a lot, can that become a problem?
Yeah, because when you cook, it releases a lot of particles, especially if you're using a gas stove. That heat would create a lot of VOCs. It's going to release particles. The gas can also create carbon monoxide because of the combustion from the fire. Yeah. So when you cook, you have to make sure that your range hood is always switched on so that it pulls the air out. Or if you don't have a range hood, just open the windows. Keep it open.
Yeah, while you're
Yeah.
cooking. What do you use for your range? Do you have a hood and do you and are using gas or what do you use to cook with?
Yeah. I use gas and I use a range hood. Yeah.
Um, what's something in your home from a healthy home standpoint that you have not addressed that you know is problematic?
CO2 mainly, especially for the evening. Yeah. During the day, it's not a problem at all because windows are open, doors are open. It's fine. It's really in the evening when you go to bed because it's hard to sleep without the air conditioner because of the warm environment.
Of course.
So yeah, it's really the CO2. Mm.
How dramatically does it go up? So it's, I guess it's going up quite dramatically that we need to ventilate it, even with, I mean, I can't imagine you have many occupants in your home. So how many people are in your space? And then is it enough? It just automatically goes up as soon as we shut up those environments, regardless. Because most people in even in the US, they don't have ventilation. We recirculate air. Most HVAC
Hmm.
doesn't bring in fresh air. So we're just
Okay.
recirculating the same old air over. So we sort of have the same problem, unless you go to commercial spaces. And some homes do have what we call, like, they're bringing in positive air or they have an ERV, but it's very rare that homes even have it here too.
Okay. So I guess it's the same issue.
Yeah.
Home care and homes in this area in this region. Yeah.
Yeah, most Americans, I mean, the newer construction now because of code, we have more ERVs and HRVs, but the older
Mhm.
homes, they don't. And the problem that we have though is like you have, I'm assuming like a wall unit for air conditioning, right? For you. So it's something you turn on. What happens
Yes.
with homes in America is we have ductwork. And so that ductwork is recirculating this air. So that becomes like another level. Like I would rather just have my air conditioning in a wall unit because then I don't have all this ductwork and everything else. And I'm just recirculating air. So we
Yep.
have a lot of things we need to maintain that don't get maintained. Maintenance is key to a home. Like if you have so much things you
Yes, I
need to
agree.
fix.
Yep.
So I'm sorry, so I cut you off, but we were talking about something that you think would be that you need to fix and address would be
Yeah.
ventilation.
Ventilation, mainly like air exchange, proper
Yeah.
air exchange. Yeah.
So our audience is listening to the talk and they're probably saying, I know I have issues in my home. I need to address these things. What is something they can do economically, doesn't cost a lot, immediately to start making the biggest difference?
You need to understand where the problem is. So without that understanding, you can try to do many things, but not really solve the root cause. Yeah. So for me, from a philosophical perspective, is data comes first. Act based on the data. Yeah, because I address the issues in my home using data, then it becomes part of your habit already. Mm.
I love that. I think that was is very wise because I think a lot of our speakers we talked about specific things, but I agree with you. It's you want to know the science. You don't just want to throw darts at a wall, not knowing what you're fixing. A lot of people say I don't feel well, and then they implement a purifier. Well,
Mm.
what are you doing? Like what?
What are you
And
addressing?
yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes that purifier can actually work to your disadvantage because it becomes a collector of the very
Mm.
thing that you are trying to get rid of. So I had clients where I was investigating for mold We found they had mold. We did the cleanup, so the mold was gone, and the client went back into the space and they were still exhibiting mold symptoms, allergies, asthma, feeling lethargic. And I said, "That's weird." I test again and it wasn't there. And then I
Mm,
looked over in the corner and there was the purifier that had been in the house the whole time when the mold problem happened. And I looked at it and I started to realize that these purifiers become a bucket for all the things that we take out of the air, but they don't go anywhere, Dustin. They just sit in the corner collecting
yes,
animal protein, cat protein, dog protein, mold, and they're not
yes,
hermetically sealed. There's nothing that keeps, if you're allergic to cat and it's in the corner, you're going to be allergic to it. It's like being in the room with it. So
yep.
we took the purifier out, and sure enough, everybody got better. So I started, that was earlier in my career, and I started to, I, I stray away. I like purification, but it's got to be in the right venue. And you have to
Yep,
be cognizant of changing those filters and making sure you're really adhering to the standard, because if you don't, you just create this mess of stuff that's going to influence you and be sitting in the room with you, which you don't want. So, like, I love your perspective because you need to get the things out, fix them, remove them so you're
yeah,
not staying in your
exactly.
toxic environment.
Yep.
What else can you share for our audience that you think is really important about air quality and things that you've learned?
Something that learned is whenever our customers ask us, "Can I do this? Can I do that to improve my health?" I always tell them, "Why do you want to do that? Do you know what's going on?" And they usually say, "No, I don't know. I just think that it's going to work if I do this." I'm like, "No, it's not going to work. You need to know what's going on first." Yeah. So it always you can only manage what you measure. That's the whole idea of it. Yeah. So we often get clients who tell us they just want to fix things, jump straight into the solution without understanding the problem.
So
Yeah.
true.
It's a very common thing that we experience. Yeah. So we have to bring our clients back to identifying the problem first before we recommend a solution or help find a solution together.
Yes. It is very true, and homeowners also want, well, we're busy people, right? We don't want to be
Mhm.
worried. We just want it fixed. We don't care. Like, just fix it right now so I can go on and do what I want to do. I think that's
Yep.
kind of all of us when we're interested in air quality, so we kind of want to know, but they just
Mm.
say, fix it. Um, where is the sensor industry going? Where are monitors going? What are the other types of things that you think in the future we will be looking for, or what can look for?
I think in the future, there would be a lot of AI involved to determine, to contextualize the data, basically. For us ourselves, we started building a virus index back in 2020 when COVID happened. Because once you understand how a virus survives, how a virus gets transmitted, multiple air quality factors affect it. So if you can address these factors all at the same time, you can reduce virus risk. So the whole idea is you don't want to just tell the customer, oh, your humidity is bad because there's no context. Or your CO2 is high. What's the context? How does it affect my health? So the idea is how do we put all of these parameters together to create context for the customer so that they would understand how it actually affects their health.
Mm.
I think that's where it would go, not just like on a like per parameter basis. It's putting these together to create context on what it means. Yeah. To make it relatable, basically.
How will AI change our industry? How is it going to, how are we going to use it in a positive way?
Uh, One way to do it is forecasting air quality within your home. That's something that we're building as well. Uh, if I understand your data over the past few months, there's a good chance that we can predict with a percentage of accuracy that this is how your air is going to look like for the next 24 hours. So if there's something that looks like it's going to go past your safety threshold, maybe before that happens, you would try to address it already. to prevent it from happening.
I love that.
Yeah, so that's something we're building as well. So I think that's where the industry would be going.
And then also with AI, I would love to see, and I don't know if this is possible, but depending on how your home is built, the actual parameters you could put in that you have HVAC, or you don't have
Mm,
ventilation, or you have OSB or a tight building envelope, the AI would be able to predict the problems that that particular home, because we all have different homes. Like, everything is so different from space to space, but being able for the AI to sort of say, "Hey, you're prone to radon, you're prone to CO2, you're" right? It'd be amazing.
yep, that's correct. We're actually working with a architectural firm in the UK. They use the data to determine how to design the next apartment with the same type of floor area and floor dimension to optimize air quality. So they
Very.
designed it once, but they didn't have data about air. They deployed sensors.
Mhm.
Then, based on how things move around, their next design for that same type of space would be different already, so that air quality is optimized. Yeah, so home design would be influenced as well.
Mm. And I think we need that because we kind of, in our industry, we try things and then we have failures because we know
Mm,
it doesn't work. All kinds of we get mold growth, we get poor air quality. Energy efficiency taught us that, right? We sealed up so tight that we said, "Uh-oh, all these people, we got sick building syndrome. Everybody got sick in the building."
yeah.
But being able that's amazing to me. And I think that will teach us the technology, the information, the data will teach us how to build a better home. I think that's so profound. Yeah. Can you give so you gave that example. Is there another example where we could utilize the sensors to help us build better?
Hmm. Not just build better. I think it's more optimization
Yeah.
of what is already there, especially when it comes to automation of your HVAC. This applies more to commercial buildings than to homes. Because sometimes commercial buildings, they tend to overuse electricity, like they overcool the building or overheat the building without taking into consideration the people inside the building. It's like they just preset the building to operate or preset the building to have a certain environment. But if there's more human traffic, the environment changes. You cannot rely on the preset.
Mm.
So why won't the building adjust based on how people are moving inside? Right.
Yeah.
So that's the whole idea. We do that for a number of buildings in Asia already.
Mm.
So we deploy our commercial solution. We automate the building based on people movement. So that let's say if there are more people, we cool it down further. If there are fewer people, we don't cool it down so much. So you save electricity at the same time. And you still
Mm.
maintain this level of comfort regardless of the human traffic inside the building.
Yes. And that helps us save on energy efficiency. And that's strictly through sensor technology, correct?
Sensor
That's how you're sent.
technology.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, the work you're doing is amazing. I'm excited that you took time to join us. I know it was a little difficult for us to get together, but we managed to do it. Can you give people information about your company, where they can find you, where they can learn about sensors, and also science data? I like you and I are both in agreement that you need to know what the problem is. Just don't throw solutions at it. Try to figure out
Mm.
the causative agent. So, can you tell people where you find the best research, where you go, and then how to find you?
Yep. Yeah. So you can find us at getuhoo.com. That's getuhoo.com. Our company is called UHoo. And when it comes to information about air quality, there are a lot of different sources that you can just search on Google. We also write a lot of articles and thought papers on our blog because we also want to share that knowledge to people. And if you want to understand how air quality or how viruses are affected by air quality, a very good resource would be the different scientific journals, like the Journal of Virology, Journal of Biology. So you can actually read about viruses and air quality, how they affect each other. So that's how we started understanding their relationship. Yeah.
And do you think from a personal standpoint, what do you think about viruses, the pandemic? Do you think this is something that's going to continue, that people are going to have to keep monitoring and being smart about how their air quality affects virus control?
Yes, I think it will be because viruses generally are transmitted through the air. If you can optimize your air quality, you reduce the chance of transmission, you reduce the chance of virus survival. Yeah. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the WELL certification.
Mhm. But tell our
Yeah.
audience about it. But tell
Yeah.
our
So the
audience.
WELL certification is very much focused on improving health and well being inside the built environment. So the whole idea is we want to elevate and focus on the health of people, whether you're at home or you're in the building. And the whole premise is air quality.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you.
Thank you for
And
having me.
I look forward to us talking again soon. Hopefully, it's not so long.
Likewise. Thanks, Caroline.